makes this book so interesting, man, is your story of trying to put it together, which is at least as powerful as the stories in the book, if not in some cases more powerful. So how did you deal with rejection?
Oh my God, horribly. You know, because pretty much the whole book at some points feels like this long string of me getting my ass beat, you know? And dealing with that rejection, I realize is not only a part of the entrepreneurial journey, it is the entrepreneurial journey. So how you deal with it is a lot more interesting than how you got your win. Because everybody will get their win in a different way, but how you deal with the rejection in many ways is a universal act. And what I've learned is that I do two things. One, when I'm getting beat up and doors are just being slammed in my face over and over and over again, and I have nothing left, the only thing that keeps me, because I've thought about quitting, you know, I'm a human being, I've thought about, you know, is this worth it? The only thing that would keep me going was that larger belief that we talked about in the beginning of it's not about me. There'll be points on my journey where I would be, you know, up at 4 a.m., sleeping at midnight, just pounding the pavement. And after, you know, getting rejected over and over and over again with that kind of lifestyle, you lose your spirit of what started it. And it was my best friends that would save me. And they would be like, dude, tomorrow, like, I'm taking your phone. We're going, you know, on an adventure. We're going, you know, whatever it was. And in many ways, that was like my emotional reset, which saved me over and over and over again.
How can we achieve a high performance mindset when maybe we don't have a great coach like that? Or someone who's powerful in our lives that maybe doesn't emit the best energy?
That's a great question, isn't that? That's such a good question. Okay, so some of you have not had the opportunity to have people in your life that get you and understand who you are. And maybe they're not sophisticated in the way that they guide you. It's a nice thought to think that we become the average of our 5 most intimate relationships. Financially, spiritually, education, you know, like we become the average of the people around us. And so I don't know a way to, I'm missing the words to share with you the importance of having people that get you and that have been down the journey and they want to help you be better. So being available for being coached is part of it. And then understanding the process to coach others is the gift you give in return to pay it forward. And so I don't have a clear answer other than maybe being open to being coached by people that have accumulated and understand and reveal to themselves a sense of wisdom. And there's wise women and wise men, and being open to that is really a wonderful accelerant to you becoming who you're meant to become. It can't happen from reading. You're not going to get it in a book. Reading is great. You know, it's a center to acquire knowledge, but moving from knowledge to insight is something that is really important. And let's never ever forget that you are your greatest coach. You are with yourself often, when you're present at least. And the inner dialogue that you have and the relationship you have with yourself was taught to you. You didn't just come into the world with that software, it was taught to you. And the good news is, if it was taught to you, you can change it. You can discard that part of you and those parts of the conversation that are no longer fitting, and you can upgrade.
You learn from failure, you learn from getting hit in the pocket.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you learn from getting hit in the pocket. You follow me? When you're giving somebody half your money and you gotta sell your house, and you learn. I made a mistake. Next time, I'm gonna play a little closer to my chest. That's how you learn in life. It's not by reading a book, because you're not gonna listen or read. The art of war is gonna teach you how to, or the war of art is gonna teach you how to plan and strategize, or both how to get rid of your fears or whatever. But it's not gonna tell you what to do and what not to do, and what's a mistake and what's not a mistake. Nobody knows the truth. You think Kenny Rogers, when he invested in that chicken company, he thought that, no, you know, they came to him with a deal. Who the knows until you try it? You don't get smart by reading a book or reading about Nostradamus. You get smart by failing. And then you decide what you're not going to do no more. I won't be doing that shit no more. You know what I'm saying?
Start checking in with your thoughts and how you're feeling each day. So outside of a gratitude practice, which I'm going to kind of talk about as well, this is probably the #1 fastest way that you can start changing your life. And I'm going to tell you about the ripple effect that happens. So it's checking in to see where you're at. What emotion are you feeling in that moment? So if you wake up in the morning and you're anything like me, I don't necessarily wake up in the best mood at all. So I really need to start figuring out how to up level my feelings, right? Because our feelings are the best indicators of what we're attracting, what we're going to attract that day, how we're going to feel, maybe what's going to come into our life, who we're going to end up talking to. Because truly, I know that we are all on we're all vibrating at a different frequency. So if you are a really positive, excited, happy person who knows that great things are gonna come your way, or who's always thinking positive, you're gonna attract that same type of person. And I can see this through my life as I've really started to up-level my life and my thoughts and my business, the people that are being drawn to me. So you really do, it really is like attracts like. So what we want to do is we want to get you into that mode, right? Those people that you're like, wow, they can just walk into a room and you just feel their energy. They're just vibrating so high, or maybe they're just always so happy, or they always, you just want to be around them because you want a piece of what they have. So how do we get there? How do we become one of those people when you wake up in the morning? Maybe if you are at a low point or you're thinking about all the things that you have to do that day, what is a thought or what is something that you can do to get yourself to the next best reachable thought? So I don't want you to think that you have to go from 0 to 100 in that split second. It's basically going from 0 to 5 to 10 to 20 to 50 and working your way up. So it's one thought at a time. So maybe you wake up and you just say 3 things that you're grateful for every single morning. You let yourself really experience being grateful for it. Really think about why you're grateful. And then what you're gonna do is as you mosey down the stairs to get your cup of coffee, you say 3 more things you're grateful for. Or I'm so grateful that I have a job today because of what it allows me to do. And you really start letting that sink in. And you think of something that maybe you're excited about, something that you could create, something that you love about yourself. It's this constant up leveling of your thoughts. So it's guiding your thoughts, right? So instead of just being mindless, which what happens, we're imperfect human beings, right? So when we're mindless and when we don't guide our thoughts, they're gonna go to chaos. They're gonna go to craziness. They're gonna go to overwhelm because life is crazy. And we're constantly getting sidetracked. We're constantly getting distracted. It's literally people's full-time job on TV, on Instagram, on whatever we're doing to distract us, right? They want us to be their consumer. They want us to be completely distracted. They want us to go to this fast food place, do this thing, do that thing. So we need to bring it back to a mindful place. So really that's what we're doing when we up-level those thoughts, is how do you bring it back from crazy town? So bring it on back and then guide it to that next best thought, right? Because the next best thought is going to attract another good thought, attract another good thought, and attract another good thought.
When you're starting out particularly, you have to play to your strengths. You have to do something that really excites you, and whatever's different about that. And in the case of following the non-linear structure was a somewhat unusual choice. But it's those things that are the strength of the project. It's the things that you can bring to what you're doing or bring to the filmmaking craft that maybe not everybody else is doing, maybe not everybody else can do or has thought to do. That's what's going to distinguish the thing. So it might seem in some ways more difficult or seem like something that would make the project more difficult to sell when it's finished, you know, what have you. But for me, I think the answer was definitely to try to play to my strengths and the things that I personally was passionate about.
There's a gap between who people are and what they tell you they want to accomplish. Because in the beginning, I hired everyone. Right. Not because I'm super smart and thought, hey, I should. There was no one else, right? Like we had the smallest handful of people ever. And so I started doing the interviewing. As I was doing it, I started realizing, God, these guys tell me they want to do something amazing with their life. And if you just listen, like, wow, yeah, like I want to be on your team, dude. You're going to do amazing stuff. And then you realize they can't execute on that dream. So
why can't they?
They don't have the mindset yet Like you could do an entire podcast series on how to get the mindset, but I'll just use Carol Dweck and her amazing book, Mindset.
I have it up there too on the shelf somewhere.
I'm sure. Such a good book. I see Simon Sinek up there, who is also very influential in us. Yeah. And she says some people either believe they're as smart as they're ever going to be, and that's that. So they're going to be ego protective, and they're going to, try to thwart anything that makes them feel like they're not the smartest person or whatever. And then there's people with a growth mindset, and they realize I'm not the smartest person, and I'm certainly not as smart as I could be. Yeah. So even if I am the smartest person that ever lived, I could get a little bit smarter. And so when they're confronted with contradictory information, they learn and they soak it up like a sponge.
Whereas other people are fixed mindset, right?
Correct.
They're fixed on like, no, this is the way and I'm right and that's wrong.
Yes. And I would say the world, everyone's on a spectrum, right? Even I, as much as I believe in it and work my ass off to be a growth mindset, I still have, let's call it 10%, where I catch myself and I'm like, come on, dude, you know better than that.
Yeah.
But so people that fall in the, let's say, sub 50% spectrum of the growth mindset, it's got to be 98%.
Ben Graham in his low teens looked around and he looked at the people he admired and he said, I want to be admired, so why don't I just behave like them? And he found there was nothing impossible about behaving like them. And similarly, he did the same thing on the reverse side in terms of getting rid of those qualities.
One of the things I advise entrepreneurs to do is when you have an idea, a classic entrepreneurial impulse is to hold the idea close to you and not go tell people because, the idea is so special. Right. That's almost always a mistake. Go talk to
Why is that a mistake? Yeah.
It's a mistake because your actual real competitive advantage is not that you have this idea that you have locked away in your closet, which may or may not be accurate and you have no idea which it is. Your actual competitive advantage is if you're assembling the intelligence around, does this idea work? What is the right team? What is the right learnings? And we're essentially in motion.
I think that's what people always have to ask themselves. Do you believe in the concept of what you're doing? Do you believe that there's really a there there? If you can figure out the right, product package or the right way to reach users, and if you believe that, then, keep scrapping, because usually there's a way.
Like me, have to do everything 3 times before we get it right. Thankfully, I know that. So I know that I have to get up early and try it 5 times, because the 8-year-old will be able to get past it in 2 times. So I have to be on my feet longer, but at least I know it. And so I just go at stuff. And it's served me very well, in that my resume is pretty varied, and I have a pretty interesting life. I get to do different stuff and have a bit of access, because I just said, I'll try that. I mean, why would I hold back?
People think happiness is all about money. Happiness is never, ever about money. Happiness is about being able to control your own life. That's all you want. It don't matter what you got in your bank, but if you can control your own life, you're happy. That's the beauty. And that's where everybody's mixed up. Yeah. Because you got all this money, but somebody else is controlling you.
As soon as I got off the phone call with him, and then also when he said, it's not in the picture now, but I think it'd be great if Dallas danced at the end, and my heartbeat went up on the phone, and I started breaking a cold sweat, like going, no, that's not. And as soon as I went, oh, no, that's not that. The other devil in my ear said, dare you, dude. And I just went, of course. I think yes. Because I immediately noticed, if you don't, you're wussing out, dude. Are you kidding me? You will forever regret. You have to. So as soon as I got over that, I was like, well, that's inevitable. I'm doing it. Now, I got to bust my ass to go do it the best I can. And there was a lot of fear in that. I mean, that was some majorly good anxiety and fear. And then, now I'm saying by that time, now everything, my choices from that phone call on were, anything I was nervous about, you have to go, f it. No, dude, go. All the way, go, meet midnight. Yes, can y'all meet me for another choreograph session? 8 a.m. Sunday morning, do you got an hour? I'm gonna go stand in the mirror. My wife's over there watching, reading something. I'm gonna stand in the mirror and I'm gonna practice a move. This is really embarrassing. Well, too bad, man. Do it in the mirror right now, because the less embarrassing that gets, hopefully the more comfortable you'll be when you're out there in front of 80 people and a bunch of cameras. And one thing you do when you go out there, don't come up short. Go all the way.
One way to conceptualize what makes a good product is, good engineering is part of it, good design is part of it, but really it's, one way I think about it is maximizing the probability that someone shows up at the front door of, your store or your website or whatever it is and ends up with a solved problem.
And oftentimes the best methodology is to start with the perfect experience, just one person, get that right, and then figure out how to scale something great instead of scaling something not so great and then trying to improve it. That's really hard to do.
I've learned and experienced is that, you know, if you don't open up and you don't delegate, then you'll kill yourself. And if there's one thing that I've managed to understand is the art of delegation, because if I can pass on, you know, to Claire Smith, to Arian, my palette, my understanding, my knowledge, then grab it, run it, and then pass it on to your team. Don't hold that inside.
So the most important part of getting to a goal is to start feeling it now, is to start acting as if, right? If you want to be that leader, if you want to be that author, if you want to be that painter, all it takes is one action, and you truly are in the process of becoming it. So it's funny that I am literally basically done with the book, and I'm like, can I call myself an author yet? I've written a book. Of course, because you have taken the action, you're doing the actions. There is no final anointing of anyone. There's no ceremony, there's no fireworks. You just start acting as if and feeling it and envisioning it and picturing it. And soon enough, you become it, right? So everybody starts somewhere. So whether you are a famous ballerina or an Olympic swimmer, they all started somewhere. They all had to take that first class. They all had to take that first leap into the water, right? And at what point can you start calling yourself a swimmer, a dancer, an author? It's the second that you start taking action and you start thinking it and you're feeling it, right? It's about embodying it. So my biggest tip for you is to start seeing yourself as that person and start taking the small actions of being that person that you want to be. That's the only thing that is separating you from actually being it. So you have to act as if in order to really start getting that ball rolling, and all of a sudden you are.
I was with a bunch of other investors who I respect, and they brought me a deal, and I wanted to be part of it, but it didn't feel right. And I wrote millions of dollars on that one. And it just didn't feel right, and I lost it all within 2 years.
So should investors trust their gut then?
Absolutely, and trust your gut.
But what about, you said earlier, don't be emotional, and sometimes the gut is
emotional. No, this is a barometer of risk. It's something internalized for an investor that says, I don't feel comfortable. It's not about emotion, it's just don't write that check. That was recently the first time I didn't listen to that, and I lost everything. So now my radar is up. I listen to my gut. It's not an emotion, it's an index of risk. And you get it as you age. You become a better investor every year. If only I could live to 200, I'd be really good.
If you're not utilizing an online community, then you're at a disadvantage to those who are. You can be asking online communities what they think about your ideas, or if they have any advice with what you're working on. Not only will you hear from people who are passionate about the subject, but you'll be hearing from people all around the world, each with their own experiences and stories that can help you.
I looked at lots of companies and why I thought they don't succeed over time. We've had a more rapid turnover of companies. And I said, what did they fundamentally do wrong? Like, what do those companies all do wrong? And usually it's just they miss the future. And so I think, for me, I just tried to focus on that and say, what is that future really going to be, and how do we create it?
Failure is part of life. I mean, the difference for me, though, is I look at failure as a stepping stone to success. It's a speed bump. I know I'm going to fail, but it's not failure if you learn something. And so, gosh, I've made so many mistakes. I've screwed so many things up, but every time I do, it just becomes a way for me to explain to someone else what it takes. You know, it's like, here's what I've done. I think I have the ability to influence people because I talk about my failures. I talk about all the things that mess me up. But I show people that I didn't let it stop me, and you don't let it stop you. And I think that's really the secret in that area.
And if everything you touch was successful, you probably won't be able to relate to people as much.
No, you'll be relate, and also it's be total bullshit, and everyone knows it's bullshit. And also you'd be bored silly. Right. I mean, think about it. If you just said, I want this and it happened, I want this and it happened, you know, people don't value what they don't fight for. You know, it's like you see kids sometimes, you know, your parents will say, you're not going to value this if you don't work for it. And your kid going, I'll value it, just give it to me, right? But it's true, you know, the things we've worked the hardest for, we value the most. So I think, you know, the purpose of a goal is not getting it anyway. The purpose of a goal, you know, is who you become. Who you become is going to make you happy or it's going to make you sad. So I'm not looking for an effortless approach. There's no such thing.
I find that levels of success in almost any industry or area correlate to a person asking great questions. In some cases, they seem absurd. In fact, the hallmark, in a way, of great questions is they sound completely ridiculous. So someone might ask, like Peter Thiel, why can't you achieve your 10-year goals in the next 6 months? As a thought exercise, that's a good question to answer for yourself. And these types of questions come up surprisingly often with very, very impressive folks, whether it's in business, military, entertainment, or otherwise. And the way you can get better at questions is by studying interviews in part. So I studied Larry King, I studied Charlie Rose, I studied Terry Gross, I studied go down the list. I studied Tony Robbins, who does in-person, one-on-one interventions at his events in front of 10,000, 5,000 people. And he's just genius with how he uses questions to like pattern interrupt and grab someone's attention and divert them in a more productive direction. Now, why is that relevant? It's relevant because thinking is the process of asking questions. You're asking yourself questions and then you're answering them in your own head. So if you get better at asking other people questions, you get better at asking yourself questions, which means you're improving your thought performance and level of thinking.
Many kids and many grown-ups do figure out over time what their passions are. And sometimes we let I don't think it's that hard. I think what happens though sometimes is that we let our intellectual selves overrule those passions. And so that's what needs to be guarded against.
So there are a number of decisions that we make every day, and on a product side, there are a billion different features that we could make. So the hard part is really choosing which ones to focus on, which ones to build, and you only have a finite number that you can't actually execute on. So for us, a lot of it is just listening to the community, and more importantly, understanding, what features they're asking for, but why are they asking for these specific things? What's the root problem they're trying to solve or goal that they're trying to achieve? And a lot of that is based on actual behavior. So not just what they say, but what they do.
And if you're really trying to achieve something, then sort of say, hey, here's my vision. And I like to say, be obstinate about your vision, but be really flexible about your tactics. What does that mean? It's sort of like think big, act small. What that means is it's important to have a vision of where you're trying to go. How you get there is a series of experiments. Now, you can call them failures when they don't work, but they're learning experiments where you try things, see what works, try the next thing.
Don't solicit feedback on your product, your idea, or your business just for validation purposes. Be really careful about that. You want to tell the people that can help move your idea forward, but if you're just looking to your friend, coworker, husband, wife for validation, be careful, because out of love and concern, a lot of people will express some concerns, and it can stop a lot of multi-million-dollar ideas right in their tracks in the beginning.
I would say that the lesson learned for me to anybody else out there interested in starting a business is please find something you're passionate about, because it's so much work, it's so much time, it's so much effort. But if the subject matter is something that you genuinely love to be involved with, it's not going to be that big of a drag, and it's not going to be that much work. It's going to be incredibly exciting and rewarding, because to your point, you'll feel like you're living the life that you're meant to live.
If somebody said to you, you'll have or you'll be as successful as you are now, what would you had said back then?
I believe you. That's what I would have said. Because I did believe.
Yes.
I believed in it. I had very few people who told me that. I had a small group of people that would tell me something like that. Other than that, it was just me telling myself.
Yep.
So if someone came up to me and told me that all the way back then, I'd say, you're damn right.
There's a lot of conventional wisdom out there, built up over time and built through all the learnings from all the companies. And this may be fully applicable to most of the companies out there. But before it's applied to your organization, I highly recommend that you question it, because it could be absolutely fatal for your success.
And so I think when you are starting a new business, you don't want to go after giant markets. You want to go after small markets, and you want to take over those markets quickly.
What this all comes down to is doing something exceptional for your users, whether it's in community.
The hardest thing to do is start. You have all these ideas, and everyone has an idea, but it's really about executing the idea and building the idea and attracting other people to help you work on the idea. That is the biggest challenge. But the way to begin is to get the idea out of your head, draw it out, talk about it, program it if you're a programmer, or make it if you're building something.
And I find, even with myself, that it's really hard to do a minimum viable product that's minimum, that you're constantly thinking, no, it really has to have this other part, and it really has to have this. And then you overbuild, and then you have to unbuild and debuild, which is very disappointing. So doing a minimum viable product is really important, and it's even more minimum than you think it is.
And so when we're coming up with ideas, we always ask ourselves, what kind of new market is this creating? And then also what part of my day and what problem is it solving? And so I've gone as far as taking an entire catalog of my day from the moment I open my eyes and writing down every single thing I do. And then asking myself, is there something here?
And so it's not just about doing focus groups, it's not just about double checking your vision, it really is about integrating this concept of testing our ideas rigorously throughout the product development process, throughout the marketing process, even as we scale up.
So when we see a kid with a lemonade stand, it's different than when we see a vending machine selling lemonade, even if it's exactly the same product, because the story around it is what people are paying for. So when I meet small business people, all I ask them is not what's their balance sheet, but what's their story. Why should I pick you? Why do I care about what you're doing? And if you start giving me all this inside baseball statistics about why you're 2% better than some other competitor, I'm already glazed over, because that's not part of the way I see the world.
A lot of times I'll be in a 200-mile run or something like that, and I'm all jacked up. Body's broken, mind's broken, spirit's broken. I start to say, what if I can pull this off? When I first walked into the Navy SEAL recruiter's office, he looked at me and said, there's only been 35 African Americans in 70 years make it through. You know what I said to myself? What if I can be the 36th? It's the what if I can pull off a miracle. What if I can become someone that no one thinks I can be? And just me talking about that, I have the hair going up on my arms, because it makes me just like, what if I can be that guy that people who call nigger and this and that, and now I'm speaking at Tom Ferry's event.
You can't ever sort of balance two completely contradictory things as a means of hedging. You have to decide what are you going to believe in and put all of your energy behind that. And those are the kinds of strategic decisions and trade-offs that you make every day as an entrepreneur. And it's important that you create the level of clarity and conviction to go after an opportunity that isn't hedging, lots of different ideas or lots of different approaches, because that's the surest way that you'll never be good at sort of anything.
Once you have the passion and thing that you're passionate about now, you can look at other people or other entities or other things or works of art, and you can draw things from that to help you be better at what you do by looking for those common denominators. Johnny wanted to know, how do I prepare? How do I prepare? How do I study? How do I view the game? How do you build your game? And my response is much like the way he builds products. You think sequentially. You look at this, the end result of what you want to create, but in order to create that, there's so many other little things that go into this massive entity or device. And it's no different than building my basketball game. You start with, what do you want your game to be? What would make your game most unstoppable or hard to deal with? And now you work backwards from there. And you start building it one piece at a time, one move at a time, one counter at a time. So there's a lot of similarities there.
A rule of thumb is to only worry about the next order of magnitude. So when you have 100 users, worry about what the company looks like. Can it survive to 1,000? 1,000, 10,000, and so on and so forth. If you're worrying about the millionth user and their experience and how your technology is going to scale when you have 100 users, you're pointed in the wrong direction.
But we realized it pays to be a cockroach. And by that, I mean, it pays just to not stop and just to not die. Like, we thought, everything along the way had tried to kill us, right? Like, all of our friends were like, startups are dumb, you're dumb, your ideas are dumb. And we kind of just looked at all of them and said, whatever, and built Codecademy. So it pays not to quit.
Today, you should think, okay, my co-founders, do we cover a lot of surface area? Do we have different skill sets? And is it somebody that I trust fundamentally? And those are really, really, really important questions to ask yourself, because if so, then you have a really strong foundation to go forward.
If you're going to start your own thing, maybe you have a grand vision of like all the different features it's going to have and all the different, revenue lines you're going to do, and keep that vision, but do one piece of that first and do it really, really, really well. It's so much better to do a few things well than many things poorly.
We get to create any company we want, right? We get to create the reason for its existence. We get to create the rules of the game and who we hire and how we hire them and who can stay and who can't stay, right? It's beautiful. And so I just would encourage everyone that as we all contemplate life to try to question the assumptions that we live by and the default options that are given to us and expand our thinking to wonder what we really can do with our lives.
What I see right now is people wrap up their sense of success and identity with their prowess in fundraising and comparing themselves against how their peers are doing. I think that's really the wrong way to look at things, and it leads to kind of non-optimal outcomes. For instance, I don't know if the valuations that companies are getting today is necessarily healthy for the company themselves. And for us, again, our inability to raise capital actually forced us to be very disciplined in how we think about the operational metrics of the company. And that's allowed us to, be pretty successful.
But what you really need to do is think about what is the smallest possible test that I can run for this idea, for this concept, for this theory, get it out there and get customers using it. Because your customers are going to be the ones to tell you if it's really working or not.
Try to do something that you would want to do anyway, whether it doesn't necessarily have to be a very successful business, because when you do decide to become an entrepreneur and start a business, chances are it's not going to become like a multi-million-dollar business. So at least do something that you love in the beginning so that even if it fails, you'd still enjoy it.
I think great entrepreneurs must have the curiosity to kind of metaphorically see around the corner. What's coming? What can I anticipate that other people don't see? And then you must have the courage of your convictions to execute the strategy.
You want an idea about what you can say. I know it sounds like a bad idea, but here's specifically why it's actually a great one. You want to sound crazy, but you want to actually be right.
Compassion for yourself, of course, is as important as compassion for others. When you, often I get asked questions like people who did something that they now realize was deeply wrong in the past. Sometimes people ask questions about they brought up their children in a way that they now realize was not very conscious, and so that they may have caused suffering to their children, or other people find they have caused suffering to loved ones and they now realize that what they did was wrong. And again, I say this is an example where you need to be compassionate with yourself, because no human being can act beyond their level of consciousness. So that was your level of consciousness at the time, and you could not go beyond that. And again here, to make demands upon yourself, up to a point it might be a good thing as long as you enjoy it, it's a wonderful thing. When the enjoyment of what you're doing is lost, then you have to be careful, because there you have to come to a stop and say, okay, there's something here that's not right, because I'm no longer enjoying what I'm doing.
The definition of values is they're the behaviors or principles that you religiously adhere to within your company. When I say religious, I mean that no amount of data will sway you from those principles. And the degree to which that you have the courage to maintain your conviction around those ideas is the degree to which you're going to be successful over the long term.
But ultimately, the biggest thing, and what I still spend from a third to a majority of my time on, is hiring. Nothing has the impact of getting the right people around the table. And you can't manage your way out of a bad team.
And so some of the best advice I got was from Paul Graham, one of the investors in Stripe, who talks a lot about unscalable strategies for user acquisition. Say, for example, you helping each user personally. Sure, that won't scale as you grow to a very large size, but when a startup is just starting out, it really helps you have an advantage as a small and nimble company.
Because when you're trying to differentiate, when you're trying to do something different, there's going to be that gut moment, that gut sense. Is this right? Is this not right? If you're not having doubt, you're not pushing the boundaries far enough.
You need to focus on solutions, not ideas. All of us here are really creative, and we come up with loads of ideas throughout the day, and we become really excited about that. And it's like, dude, we should start a company around that. But that's when you actually go to the other side, where you talk to, where you find out what someone actually a problem that they have and solve that is when real value comes out.
I'm in meetings a lot. My calendar gets very full with those, and then at night, after the kids have gone to bed, I'm on email a great deal. I get messages during the day. That's my chance to give long responses, and then over the weekend, I send a lot of mail as well. I take 2 weeks a year to just go off and read and think, where I'm not interrupted by work or anything else. I'm just solidly trying to think about the future, and people get to send me things to read as part of that so-called Think Week. So it's a nice mix of things. About 25% of the time that I'm out traveling around, meeting with customers, Europe, Asia, and that sort of helps me think, okay, do we have the right priorities? What are people responding well to, and what would they like to see us do better?
Go talk to people who failed at what you're doing, and who are no longer doing it. There always are those people. So you started a startup, you look at the history of your space. I'm so surprised how many people I talk to, founders who have no idea the history of their own space. And there's some nice naivete to that, in the sense that you're gonna do it differently. And there's some truth to that. But when you get down to making it work, and now you're into it already, you've kind of established what you're doing, and you have some problems, then I'd go talk to all these people who failed, because you'll uncover all sorts of interesting things that you could try.
Because if you build something for yourself, if you build something that you love, that you think is sufficiently epic, if you make something that you love, there's probably another billion people in the world that love it as well.
Larger, more established entities can't move as quickly as you can. And success and scale and size all fight against this. And I would encourage you, for the longest possible time as you sort of start your own companies, to look for ways to stay agile.
Whether it's in connection or whether it's in design. This is our big advantage as a startup, is that we can actually get away with doing this. We can make this the core part of why we're doing business.
It's so hard. I thought doing this research, I thought going into it, there were authentic people and inauthentic people. I did not find any evidence of that at all. What I found is authenticity is a practice, and you choose it every day, sometimes every hour of every day. And it's a practice. It's not, I just wake up and, hey, I'm authentic.
Most startups that fail do it ultimately because they did not make something that people wanted. They made something that, that they thought people would want, but they were either in denial about it, about whether it was actually any good, or somebody else came along and made something that people wanted even more.
So it's about this movement forward, not what you own, not your education or your pedigree, not a pile of resources you might have at hand, not your network, just going after this thing and knowing that as you do that, you'll find what you need, you'll make your way over, around, and through. And I think the best entrepreneurs that I've met are able to do that because they have this strong vision and they know that it's worth it to keep moving forward.
If you're going to have a breakout startup, you've really got to think about how you're going to innovate on distribution, not just product, right? And the biggest mistake I see these days that I see brilliant startup founders who are brilliant product people and they've really thought about their product, but they haven't really thought about how they're going to make it grow. And then they launch their product, and it's like crickets chirping. No one's using it, and they're kind of flummoxed as to what to do because they've never really spent time thinking about it. And they just kind of assume that, if you build a good product, everyone's going to find it. And the reality is, it's a big web out there, and that's not necessarily true.
The beauty of failing is if you're open to admitting the failure and learning from it, you probably won't fail again in that one department, and you'll know what to expect next time, and that just makes you stronger and more accurate with the risks that you take.
From the time I was 7 years old, every Saturday I would go for 4 hours of acting class every Saturday.
Whoa.
And I loved it. I just loved it. To the point where all the kids graduated and went on to this other stuff, and I started doing adult acting classes, and then I was in the commercial classes, and then I loved like the hair and makeup classes and just everything. I just couldn't get enough.
And you know what everybody wants to hear? What they already believe to be true. And so the last thing they want to hear is an original idea that contradicts their belief system. So it's very hard to even bring that kind of stuff up. But those are the things, those are the only things that you believe that everybody around you doesn't believe, when you're right, that create real value in the world. Everything else people already know. There's no value created. It's just business as usual. So it's so important to think for yourself.
I do believe that organizations, human organizations, are inherently unstable. They will fall over, and you have to work to keep them upright. But they fall slowly. Most people don't notice it. They let their success blind them. They don't see it falling over. The falling takes place slow, but the collapse is quick. You have to do constant assessment. You have to look for the hard truths.
It's not necessarily about the exit or the outcome. It's about the journey. So it's for me, it's just I think you just need to enjoy that aspect of it. It's because it's not always an easy ride. It's a lot of ups and downs along the way. But as long as you're personally fulfilled by that experience and genuinely enjoy what you do, then it makes it worthwhile.
Don't necessarily think that you have to have the home run and the huge Apple computer on your first start. I spent a long time in my life with skills just building little devices for fun. For fun is one of the key things, because that drives you to think and think and think and make it better and better and better than you ever would if you're doing it for a company. Build things at first for yourself that you would want.
If you're not coming up with 10 ideas a day, that's why I have this thing. If I'm not filling up this page every single day, then my idea muscle will atrophy. And I started this in 2001, and I still do it every single day. Like, you have to come up with ideas every single day, or the idea muscle atrophies. The good news is, after about 6 months of doing that, you're like a machine. Like, people get surprised at how many ideas you could just have.
So many things go wrong when you're starting a company, and often I think people ask, what mistakes should you avoid making? And my answer to that question is, don't even bother trying to avoid mistakes, because you're going to make tons of mistakes, right? And the important thing is actually learning quickly from whatever mistakes you make and not giving up. Right, and I mean, there are things every single year of Facebook's existence that could have killed us or made it so that it just seemed like moving forward and making a lot of progress just seemed intractable, but you just kind of bounce back and you learn, and nothing is impossible. You just have to kind of keep running through the walls.
You already know who you are, and that piece that we're after lies somewhere beyond personality. Your need for acceptance can make you invisible in this world. Don't let anything stand in the way of the light that shines through this form. Risk being seen in all of your glory.
I try and be decisive. I try, and even if I don't know what the hell I'm doing, I try to be decisive, because I think it's very comforting and reassuring and important to the people that are working with you to feel that whoever is in charge knows what they're doing and knows what they're thinking, and that if it's a yes, it's a yes, and it's a no, it's a no. I mean, I don't think of myself as a boss. I mean, I think of myself as someone who's giving direction and guidance, and vice versa.
You're really trying to solve a new problem in a different way. You have to come to problems with beginner's mind. Right? Not knowing something can be a very powerful tool into accomplishing it, because you don't know that it's not possible. That's what doing a startup is. Not realizing that something is impossible and doing it anyway.
How do you think about making a decision when everyone tells you this is a crazy idea? Or where do you get the internal strength to do that?
Well, first of all, I'd say I actually think I feel fear quite strongly. So it's not as though I just have the absence of fear. I feel it quite strongly. But there are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough, that you do it in spite of the fear.
So speaking of important things,
like people shouldn't think people shouldn't think, well, I feel fear about this and therefore I shouldn't do it. It's normal to feel fear. Like there'd have to be something mentally wrong if you didn't feel fear.
So you just feel it and let the importance of it drive you to do it anyway.
Yeah, actually something that can be helpful is fatalism, to some degree. If you just accept the probabilities, then that diminishes fear. When starting SpaceX, I thought the odds of success were less than 10%, and I just accepted that actually probably I would just lose everything. But that maybe would make some progress if we could just move the ball forward. Even if we died, maybe some other company could pick up the baton and keep moving it forward, so that would still do some good. Yeah, same with Tesla. I thought the odds of a car company succeeding were extremely low.
So just go and do it, try, learn from it. You'll fail at some things. That's a learning experience that you need so that you can take that on to the next experience. And don't let people who you may respect and who you believe know what they're talking about, don't let them tell you it can't be done. Because often they will tell you it can't be done, and it's just because they don't have the courage to try it.